You hold it every night. Sometimes tightly, sometimes loosely, a habit, a comfort, a rhythm learned long ago. The Rosary. It hangs by your bedpost, sleeps under your pillow, rides quietly in your pocket. It has been with you through hospital rooms, airplane flights, long drives, and lonely walks. And yet, something is missing. You whisper the prayers. You count the decades. But nothing stirs. No tears. No warmth. No peace. And in your silence, you dare to ask, why doesn't my rosary work anymore? This is a question many are afraid to ask, but it burns in the soul. The Church teaches that the rosary is not magic. It is not a lucky charm. It is not a button to press, a shield to wave, a chant to chant. It is a journey, a walk with Mary, a slow descent into the mysteries of Christ. Pope Leo XIV once said, "When the rosary is reduced to routine, it loses its roar. But when it is prayed with love, even once, it becomes a sword." Perhaps you have lost love, not for God but for the prayer. Perhaps it became mechanical. Perhaps it became desperate, used only in crisis, not in communion. Or perhaps you're just tired. This is not failure. This is invitation. Invitation to begin again. Not from the beginning of the rosary, but from the beginning of your heart. Say it slower tonight. One beat, one breath, even if it feels dry, especially then. Because Mary does not wait for perfection. She waits for you. And even the most exhausted whisper, if spoken with sincerity, can awaken heaven. You've been told to pray. You've been told to say the rosary. So you do. In the car, on the treadmill, while folding laundry, before bed, half asleep. You multitask. You press through the decades like ticking boxes. And you wonder, quietly, almost ashamed, why does heaven feel so far? It is not because you are unworthy. It is not because God is silent. It is because your heart is not there. The Catechism reminds us, prayer is the raising of the mind and heart to God, not just the voice, not just the words. When you pray without presence, you are speaking, but not listening, moving but not meeting. Pope Leo XIV put it gently, a rosary without the heart is a song without sound. It reaches no one, but there is hope. You can return. You can take one decade and pray it like it's your only prayer. You can say, Jesus, help me be here with you. You can look at the crucifix and simply breathe. That is prayer. That is presence. The rosary is not an obligation. It is an invitation to slow down, to feel again, to see her, the Virgin, not as an image but as a mother, and to let her walk with you through every sorrowful, joyful, glorious, and luminous place in your soul. This is where power returns. Not when the mouth moves, but when the soul opens. Even a distracted rosary can be holy if you keep returning, and heaven will meet you there. It was your grandmother's, or maybe your father's, worn smooth by decades of prayer, touched by tears, carried through trials. You inherited it with reverence, placed it gently in a drawer, or displayed it beside the family Bible. You meant to pray it, but you didn't, and now it sits, sacred but silent. You say to yourself, it's there. That means something. Yes, but not enough, because faith cannot be inherited like furniture. It must be lit. The rosary is not a relic of family memory. It is a rope, meant to pull you deeper into love. Pope Leo XIV once said, a rosary passed down is a seed, but a seed must be buried in the heart to bear fruit. So what stops you? Maybe you feel unworthy. Maybe you don't remember how. Maybe you're afraid it won't work, that you'll feel nothing. Let that fear go. Mary never asked for perfect recitation. She asked for presence. Start tonight. Hold that rosary. Feel the history in its weight. And whisper the first words, Hail Mary. Let the legacy become living. Because the beads of your ancestors were never meant to sleep. They were meant to awaken your soul. And when you pray them, truly you do not pray alone. You join a chorus of saints and generations. And heaven listens with joy. You pray the joyful mysteries, but your heart feels sorrowful. You say, Hail Mary, but your mind is on bills, deadlines, dinner. You move from bead to bead, but the decades blur. You wonder, why bother? Why repeat these same prayers when your heart feels cold? Why say what you don't feel? Here is the sacred truth. The repetition is not a weakness. It is a rhythm, like waves on the shore. The Church teaches that meditative prayer is a path of formation, not just expression. You are not just speaking. You are letting the mysteries shape your soul, even if you don't feel it now. Pope Leo XIV put it beautifully, the rosary carves silence into the soul, decade by decade, until the heart can hear again. So if the decades feel dry, keep going. Not out of guilt, but out of faith, because you are not failing. You are sowing. Each repetition waters a seed you cannot yet see. And one day, in silence or in sorrow or in sudden joy, it will bloom. Mary will come close, and you will realize every Hail Mary you ever whispered was a thread in the tapestry of grace. Even the one said with no emotion. Even the one said with distracted hands. Keep praying. Not because you always feel it, but because you believe. And one day, you will feel again. There's a reason your rosary feels harder to pray lately. It's not just tiredness. It's not just distraction. It's resistance. Because whether you feel it or not, you are in a spiritual battle. Every bead you touch pulls light into darkness. Every mystery prayed opens wounds of Christ that pour grace into forgotten places. And yes, the enemy sees this. Some saints have said, the devil fears the rosary more than the sword of Saint Michael, because the rosary is not passive. It is a weapon. But here is the danger. When you forget this, you stop fighting. You start seeing the rosary as a comfort, not a call. As a decoration, not a declaration. And then lukewarmness creeps in. Pope Leo XIV once thundered from the pulpit, if Catholics knew the fire they held in their hands, they would never put it down. So pick it up again, not with guilt, but with fire. Pray like a soldier. Pray like someone who believes the next bead might be the one that breaks the chain, for you, for your children, for a soul in purgatory. Because the fight is real, but so is your weapon. And it's time to use it. You've prayed the rosary for healing, for conversion, for peace in your family. And nothing seems to happen. The sickness stays. The loved one drifts farther. The silence grows louder. And you begin to wonder, is God listening? This is the ache of many Catholics. We are told the rosary is powerful, and it is. But sometimes its power is hidden. It works in silence. It delays for mercy. It shapes the soul before it shapes the situation. The Church teaches that every prayer, every single one, is heard, remembered, and used. Pope Leo XIV called it the slow miracle, when grace flows like oil, not lightning. Quiet, patient. You may not see the miracle yet, but that doesn't mean it isn't coming. Sometimes the rosary is not changing your situation. It's preparing you for it, strengthening your trust, softening your will, deepening your roots so when the storm comes you do not fall. So keep praying, not because the miracle has come, but because your faith says it will, in God's way, in God's time, in God's love. Mary is still interceding, heaven is still moving, and your prayer is still working, even if it feels like waiting, especially then. There comes a holy moment in every soul's journey when the rosary changes. It's no longer a list of needs, no longer a string of petitions. It becomes a gift. You stop praying only because you're hurting. You start praying because you love. You don't rush to the sorrowful mysteries hoping for rescue. You enter them to console him. You don't offer the joyful mysteries just for blessings. You pray them to rejoice with her. The shift is quiet but real. You stop trying to get something, and you begin to give something. Your attention, your time, your love. Pope Leo XIV described this turning beautifully. The rosary begins in need, but it matures in adoration. When you forget yourself in prayer, you begin to truly find him. When was the last time you prayed simply to be close? Not for an answer, not for a miracle, just to sit with Christ, to walk with Mary through his life. This is where the rosary becomes luminous, even in silence, even in dryness, even in a dark room at night with no candle, no emotion, just a whisper. Jesus, I'm still here. That kind of prayer changes the world, because it no longer depends on outcomes. It breathes love, and love always bears fruit, even if unseen, even if slow. You reach for it now, not because you have to, but because something in you longs for it. You feel it when the world gets loud, when the soul feels thin, when your hands ache to hold something holy. You pick up the beads, and this time they feel different, warmer, heavier, not with burden but with meaning. Because now, you know, this is not jewelry. This is not superstition. This is not tradition alone. This is a chain of heaven stretching across time, held by martyrs, whispered by mothers, carried into hospital rooms, clutched in war, sung in processions, and now held by you. You've learned it the hard way, through dryness, distraction, discouragement. But you've learned, the rosary doesn't always work the way we want. It works deeper. It pulls us slowly back to God, back to trust, back to truth, back to love. And when it burns in your hands, not with fire but with presence, you realize the miracle has already happened. It was never about changing your life. It was about returning to the one who gives it meaning. You may never be perfect in prayer. You may still wander, but now you carry a light, a weapon, the psalm. And the next time you whisper, "Hail Mary," the darkness will tremble, because this time you believe again.